Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the Outside Insider podcast here on Philly Sports Network with myself, Liam Jenkins. You know the score by now. All things Eagles related from the last 7 days, wrapped up, put into a nice package and given to you in a McDonald's Happy Meal, absolutely free of charge from myself. So if you're new to this podcast, if you're wondering what the hell's going on, why is there a British guy shouting at me and talking about the Eagles, now's the time to hit subscribe. We are on iTunes, Spreaker, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Google Play, and a cream egg box. You guys don't have cream eggs, do you? That's annoying. They're like, do you have cream eggs? Like little Easter eggs with the cream inside? I don't know. If you got one of those boxes. If not, we'll go with a Hot Pocket. My American knowledge is definitely improving. But it would really mean the world to us as well if you could drop a little review if you've not yet given one to. If you do listen on iTunes, if you could rate it 5 stars, drop down what you think of the show. And if you hate it, then maybe just DM me on Twitter. Then we can have a little chat. No, I'm kidding. But it would mean a lot if you could leave a little 5-star review. It really does help us grow. It's an important weekend for the Eagles, so we're going to start off with that and then dive into some other interesting things as well. But this is now almost a final breath before the storm, the calm before the storm. It's the episode before the Battle of Winterfell where Brie, I'm not going to ruin it unless you haven't watched it yet, that will be annoying. But, however, this is it. OTAs are nearly here. Rookie minicamp takes place this weekend and the Eagles have 10 undrafted free agents, all of their rookies that were drafted, and 27 tryouts. Now, this is an important weekend for a lot of reasons. Obviously, for a media and fan perspective, it's the first time that we all get to see what those drafted players look like. What are they bringing to the table? Are we going to see Andre Dillard go through certain drills? What's Miles Sanders going to look like? Are we going to see players catching the ball? Now, as far as I'm aware, media only have access to individual drills. You don't actually get to watch team drills, which is obviously where most of the meat on the bone tends to be. However, it's interesting to know that Doug Peterson had his first press conference in quite some time today and was straight away, and I don't understand this, okay? This is a time to ask about the rookies, to ask about the tryouts. Are there any undrafted free agents that catch your eye? What is the next generation of Eagle going to look like? What do the positional battles look like? Who are the mentors going to be? And the first question they get asked is Carson Wentz going to be around for OTAs? Like, behave, come on. Behave. Like, you don't need to do that. And Peterson quite rightly responded, saying, how does that pertain to this weekend's rookie minicamp? Which is a very eloquent response. I would have been exactly the same. However, he did give some very interesting viewpoints and saying that behind the depth chart at the moment, Arcega-Whiteside is behind Alshon Jeffrey. That is definitely worth noting. We also noticed that Dillard is behind Jason Peters, which to me says he's at least in front of Vaitai. And there's going to be a discussion about if any of those guys move inside, but we'll get to that a little bit later on. As for what else this weekend's important, aside from hearing what Doug Peterson has to say and what sneaky clues we're going to get over the backs filtering in. For instance, Miles Sanders will be behind Jordan Howard. We know that much with Howard being the mentor. We also get to see some of the undrafted free agents in action, and this is where the sleepers come in. Now, I've written articles, I've made videos about just why those undrafted free agents are important to this team, and it doesn't really need much explanation. Whether it's Trey Burton, whether it's Corey Clement, whether it's Josh Adams, it doesn't really matter. Even Destiny Vio and Bruce Hector. The Eagles find real value in these UDFAs, and there's no guarantee any of them will make the final roster. It's unlikely, certainly, that all 10 will, but there is a chance that 2 or 3 of those guys, for instance, take Trey Sullivan, who ended up playing 40% of special team snaps last year, could have a role to play in the off-season to come and beyond. And even on the rookie tryouts, where the team actually signed 4 of those players, including, I believe it was Jabri Williams and Kyle Wilson were the 2 main ones. They had Tim Wilson as well, who, off the top of my head, was, I think, cut during the roster cut down. He was a wide receiver, had a relatively strong time during camp. But there's also Weston Stillhammer, who trained with the team during 2017, and he does put his name in the hat for the award of best name. Alright, we know Weston Stillhammer, the reason he couldn't be signed, because he worked at, or studied at Air Force, which meant he had to have 2 years worth of service before signing an NFL contract. So he's now back. I think Peterson grew up with him. Not grew up, that would be very weird, but was coaching his son's basketball team or something along those lines. So we've got that affiliation there. There are guys trying out for this team who could have a real impact and just sneak onto the bottom. 2 that I've picked out to watch this weekend. Trey Watson, a running back out of Texas, who I think has tremendous potential. Again, a slightly smaller back, but he had 185 rushes for 786 yards last year, and 22 receptions for 143. So a slightly versatile guy. Again, we don't know what that ceiling is going to be, especially given that they've already signed Nico Evans out of Wyoming to an undrafted contract, and that running back picture is fairly clustered. We'll touch on that a little bit later as well, but that is one name, one of the more attractive tryout names, I would say, definitely. Outside of that, there is another guy to keep an eye on. That's Tyrell Gilbert, a safety out of Cincinnati. I think he could be a really big name. We know, again, the Eagles don't exactly have a lot of safety depth right now. There's even been questions of an Andrew Sendejo trade that have entered my timeline, bizarrely, and I don't know where or why, but that's not happening. So Tyrell Gilbert could be a name to watch, just to sneak on, maybe provide some special teams value, as he did for Cincinnati. Could be a name. We're not going to get into too much detail here. We'll see if any of them do stick on with the team after this week's rookie minicamp, but it's important for those guys. And this is the reason why. Now, I know the first part of this show has been a bit disjointed and running around trying to touch all bases, but why is rookie minicamp important for the tryouts, for the undrafted free agents who may get cut in a few weeks, if not a few months' time? The answer is that it all comes down to familiarity. A lot of these players, believe it or not, will get contacted by 2, 3, maybe 4 NFL teams ahead of the 7th round saying, you're going to be our guy, get ready on the phone, and then the team go a different direction. And teams play it up. It's really bad. It's like high school recruiting. You see it a lot, especially in the higher rounds of the draft. And I think that's why you saw someone like DK Metcalf so excited and almost breaking down when he finally got selected by Seattle. But especially in the later rounds, that's where it hurts guys the most, where you do get built up in that lock and you put hopes in actually being drafted and getting what is upwards of $100,000 roster bonus, only to then for it to fall through. And then you've got to go through the process of where do you want to sign, who's going to call the phone, is that team who's been showing you all this love still going to pick up, or are they going to go elsewhere? How many are they talking to? It's sort of like putting all your chips on a girl who's sleeping around, and I would know because I've been there. So it's not a good spot to be. I forgot how different these podcasts are to any other content I do. Oh god. But yeah, it's interesting, and having, some of you will know now that I've taken on a role with a sports agency on the side, seeing the other side of it is very interesting. So teams want familiarity, okay? They want to get players where throughout this draft process, throughout the post-draft process, whether that's mini camps, workouts, whatever, familiar with the scheme, the players, the character, the coaches, all of that, so that if, God forbid, there's an injury 2 or 3 weeks into the regular season, they've got a guy they can call up. They can call his name and say, right, John, you little linebacker, come up here, we've dropped a guy, we need some special teams depth. That's what it's all about. That and, of course, practice squad as well, which is also very helpful. But that process starts at pro days. It starts at the combine, where you want to look for guys who, in 6 to 8 months down the line, if you're stuck in a bit of a rut, you've got someone that comes in, fits what you're doing, fits the scheme, fits the culture, and already has a very, I'd say, a rough grasp on what the team are trying to do. So for these guys, they may not get signed. These 27 tryouts, not all of them can sign. The roster is maxed out at 90 now. The man who capped it off today was none other than Jamalcolm Liggins, who I interviewed earlier this week at Philly Sports Network. So if you haven't read that, be sure to go and check that out. He's a great guy, a small school sleeper, 6'3" cornerback, gonna have a tremendous upside if the right coach can kind of get under him. Not in that way, alright, friendly podcast. But 27 tryout players, you may see 4 or 5 of them constantly coming back, especially the guys who can help special teams. You've got one long snapper trying out, so Kevin Bletzer out of Boston College. It sounds silly. Do not be surprised if 10 weeks into the season, you end up seeing him on a practice squad. Because you never know what happens in the playoffs. We saw in 2017, Trey Burton was long snapping for a time. Louis Vecchio is another man, defensive end, he's trying out. Scott Orndorff out of Pitt is a tight end that's trying out. There are a couple guys on here that could instrumentally help the Eagles. Kyle Gibson out of UCF could be a great special teams guy. So don't write it off. Just think, it's rookie minicamp, it's an induction, it doesn't really matter. This is the first step for a lot of players right now. And especially with OTAs taking place in, I believe it's May 21st, the Eagles OTA start. It's a nice breather. It's a nice ease in. It's like your first week at work where you have to watch all the safety videos. It was really annoying. That I remember, okay, so when I worked at that, everything comes back to the DIY store, doesn't it? It doesn't matter what I do. So that DIY store I worked at, the first day, they had to teach you how to lift a box because obviously it's DIY, you're picking things up. And to do it, not only did you have to wear a high visibility jacket in an office, but then they made you watch a safety video which was formatted like a sports show where they were showing you highlights of a soccer game and the instant replay was a man lifting a box. This is rookie minicamp. This is what it is. Only the difference is you're on, for some people, a 1 weekend tryout. So if you don't lift that box properly, you're out. You better get to know every boss, every employee, make sure you're stacking shelves properly, and just really taking that for what it's worth, because that may be one of the only workouts you get. So it is that first jump. It's an induction week in every sense of the word. For the drafted rookies, it's a nice dip your toe into the water, get to know the coaches, understand what drills are going to look like. For the guys who are undrafted, and for especially the tryouts, imagine Motorhead, the Ace of Spades, playing in the background, and these guys having to treat this like it's training camp. So this may not seem all that deep, but to those players, it's the be-all and end-all. There's no reason why the Eagles couldn't take on one of those guys and waive someone else. We've already seen them do it before the Temple defensive back even got to rookie minicamp. He was already waived and replaced with someone else. So you never know. So rookie minicamp is very interesting. It's very exciting. And although you don't get to see a lot, or even hear a lot, I think Peterson spoke today and that's it. It's nice to know that the players that you may get familiar with over the course of the next few months are taking those first steps. What do they look like? You're going to take to Twitter and see a few videos of guys tackling bags and running under bars and all that sort of thing. You can't gauge a lot from it, but there will be certain things you can draw from. Looking at how players are comfortable, where are the coaches pulling? Are they pulling guys aside? Are they favouring? Are they very applauding of certain players? That's what you're looking for. And we'll try and bring you a nice recap of that over the next week or so. But yeah, I would just be very, very focused on that while everyone else is taking the week off almost and looking at the Sixers and all of the other exciting things around Philadelphia sports. The Eagles are on their way back, and rookie minicamp is very much that first step of rookies taking that jump, getting acclimatized with the atmosphere of the NovaCare complex, with the other players, with their teammates, with the coaches. So keep an eye on it. There are some very interesting things to watch. I keep saying very, and I don't know why, but I think that one of the big things that we need to touch on directly from that is the undrafted haul. We've spoken about the guys trying out for the team. What about the guys that have been signed? Who are the guys that are going to make the team? And I truly feel there are 3 players. Now, we're going to have 4 players who I think have a realistic shot to make the final 53-man roster. Now, we're going to start off with... We'll save it for last, actually. Like, the player I'm most excited about is someone that you won't expect, and I will, unless you've watched the video yesterday, then it's kind of spoiled. But I'll save it for last. The first player I think has a very good chance. See, very again, I don't know why. Honestly, if you look at it from a bigger picture, is TJ Edwards out of Wisconsin. Shock horror, I know. You've never heard that before in the last week, but I think Edwards has got everything the Eagles look for in a linebacker. He's quick, he's productive, 112 tackles as a senior, had 4 years in a row where he had 80 plus tackles. That is a little bit sexy, isn't it? That is just a bit filthy. So he's productive all across the field. He had 7 career interceptions. Well, 7 interceptions in... Oh, my email's gone off. 7 interceptions in the last 2 years. 5 sacks. 22.5 tackles for a loss. That's big. That's a big boy stat line. And he was projected to go round 5, round 6. And he's just one of the players that fell through the cracks. And if the Eagles were looking for linebacker value, obviously they traded that 6th round pick. Hey, there's a very good chance if they were on the clock in round 6, they may have taken TJ Edwards. If not for that trade. Or even the round 7 trade. He could have been there, but they ended up bringing in the Colts defensive tackle, Hassan Whiteside, who I was very high on anyway. I love that move. It makes way more sense to do that than get a rookie where you're not really going to get instant production out of a 7th rounder. Outside of TJ Edwards, the second guy I think has a real big shot at making this final 53. Are you ready? See, I wish I had some sound effect for drama. All I've got is this. And I can't loop that. I mean, we've got a belt. That doesn't, we have this every show. Oh, that fit quite well. I should just do that every time I say something mildly amusing. But Keegan Render, a centre, out of Iowa, comes from a pro-style offence, 6'4", 307 pounds, and has played at both guard spots. And what do the Eagles like in their offensive linemen, ladies and gentlemen? No, not laughter. They like versatility. That's what they like. They like guys who can move around. So Render's someone, slightly bigger body, very athletic frame, has a very strong football IQ. Again, saying the word very, there's got to be extremely. Maybe I can slot that in there somewhere. But I feel as though that although he's a little bit more raw as a prospect, like it's frantically fast hands that kind of go everywhere. It's that puppy paw thing that I've said in a film room before. His feet can get away from him at times. Establishing that strong base can be difficult against some of the bigger maulers at defensive tackle. I think if you move him to guard or someone that you've got that versatility to plug and play wherever, it's huge for the Eagles. It's absolutely huge. So do not be surprised if that guy makes the roster. And now I would look at maybe somewhere else. I would look at a Penn State guy. I would look at maybe Ryan Bates or DeAndre Tompkins or even Nico Evans out of Wyoming. But my third player that I think has a massive, massive, massive chance to make this roster, and I'm rooting for 158.3%, and I genuinely think he could, is Anthony Rush. Now, Liam, here is Anthony Rush. You tell me. Anthony Rush, out of UAB, is a defensive tackle that stands at 6'5", 350 pounds. And when I tell you he reminds me of Brandon Mebane, he reminds me of Brandon Mebane. Alright? Now, I know he's from a smaller school. He had 43 tackles, 11 for a loss, and a pair of sacks. That's not elite numbers. It's not going to be a Christian Wilkins. It's not going to be any of the elite pass rushers from this year's crop. However, I don't think that's who he is. Anthony Rush isn't that guy. If you look at his size, the man is a behemoth. He's like the Hound on probably the Mountain on Game of Thrones. Sorry, Hound. But Brandon Mebane's role in that Chargers defense, prior to them taking one in the first round, was space eating. Now, why would the Chargers need a space eating defensive tackle? Well, the truth is, they used to play a 3-4, then they got hold of Bosa, and then they moved to a 4-3 to better accommodate his skill sets, and who can blame them? The fun part of that is, they were left over with these nose tackle type players, and instead of having a Fletcher Cox or a Malik Jackson to begin with, what they did was take guys like Mebane and turn them into space eaters. Guys that would swallow up two teams? Double teams? 2 teams and 3 teams? Sometimes 4 teams. They'd swallow up double teams and sometimes triple teams. And they would just hold leverage. And they would push the pocket. And all that enables them to do, with someone that big and powerful, it draws attention. And a guard is going to have to come inside. And the minute they do that, it's a one-on-one matchup with either Melvin Ingram or Joey Bosa. There's 98% of the time only one winner there. That's Joey Bosa or Melvin Ingram. And then you've got 2 of the most disruptive defensive ends in the league being enabled by a defensive tackle. Now, what the Eagles have right now is a dominant run stopper in Timmy Jernigan, someone coming off a career high in sacks in Fletcher Cox, and Malik Jackson, who can play a 3-tech or a 5-tech. Right? That's their depth right now. Anthony Rush can come in, be that space-eating guy, and imagine a set. If the Eagles want to go NASCAR, shake it up. Put Anthony Rush, the defensive tackle, in the middle. Have him take on a double team, and have Brandon Graham, Derek Barnett, and for the sake of this argument, we'll say Vinny Curry. Now, we could, put whatever defensive end you want there. Maybe you want to see Joe Osman run around. I don't know. But any 3 defensive ends you want. Hell, bring a 5th down. We'll take out a linebacker. Bring a 5th, alright? Anthony Rush swallows a double team, and it is speed versus everything else. And the Eagles would get a lot of pressure that way. Even if you want to go another aspect of this, when Fletcher Cox and Malik Jackson burn out, you put Timmy Jernigan and Anthony Rush, 2 much bigger, stockier defensive tackles who can maybe both command double teams, who can really push that interior and allow someone with a counter like Derek Barnett to cut inside. I think that is a massive, massive hole in this Eagles pass rush. It's honestly going to get you a bit flustered if you just imagine Anthony Rush in the middle, 6'5", 350, commanding double teams. Now, he can burn out quick. He's not the most, I would say endurable. I think that's probably the wrong word. But endurance isn't his strong suit. He's not lightning athletic. He doesn't have an array of pass rushing moves. But this is a space-eating guy. Think Brandon Mebane. Now, out of sheer curiosity, I'm going to very quickly Google. I've just spelled Brandon Membrane. That's not... Oh my god! Brandon Membrane. I wanted to just see how much he weighed, what his size was like, because I hadn't actually done that. So he's 6'1", 311. And Josh is 6'5", 350. That's a monster. Absolute monster. So, that's my pick. If I'm picking one undrafted free agent to make this roster, it's Anthony Rush. And I will have an article specific, basically just covering what I've said just now, because I think this is massively underrated. Anthony Rush has got one hell of a frame. Philip Daniels is going to love. And that could be dangerous. For an Eagles pass rush, it will tick every box. Can they have speedier, lighter sets? Absolutely. Do you want to get... you could technically have a formation where you have Malik Jackson playing a 5-tech, Jernigan, Cox, and a defensive end. That's meaty. You could put all 4 defensive tackles out, including Anthony Rush in the middle, and it be effective. That would be ridiculous. Now, I'm not saying that he won't struggle or there won't be a clear jumping difficulty from what he had at UAB. But again, you can't go into preseason and go, oh, Anthony Rush didn't get a sack, and say he won't make the team, because his role isn't that. If he can command a double team which allows someone else to get the sack, that's enough for me. I would have him every day of the week, and at least the size alone is intriguing. The Eagles could have a real wild card there. But who are the undrafted free agents that you want to see signed by the team? Let me know. If you're on YouTube in the comments, that would be nice. If not, go to YouTube and let me know in the comments. If not, Twitter, @LiamJenkins21. And while we're on that note, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for my favourite part of the show. Your favourite part of maybe the show. If not, don't worry about it. But here we are. It's Thank You Next. This is it. Now, I've got a few questions today. I've had DM questions again. This is new. My voice just wobbled a little bit then, so excuse me for that. But we're going to start off with Mike Douglas. Thank you next. He says, do you think Mailata will make the final roster? Do you think Sproles comes back? Yes, I think Jordan Mailata makes the roster. The Eagles value his development way too much to let him go. And if you expose him to waivers, it's too risky. I think they're going to end up losing him if they do that. So they'll keep him on there, probably at the expense of one of the more developmental prospects behind him. And do you think that Darren Sproles comes back? No, not after this year's draft. I think they've fortified the running back position way too much now. So Darren Sproles, in my opinion, is a bit of a goner. It's going to be an emotional retirement, but Darren Sproles I don't think will be coming back. Thank you. Next, Sean Lamont says, LJ, my man, I believe the Eagles will win the division and return to the playoffs. What do you think the chances are they can win the division and also secure the number 1 seed? At this point, Sean, I think it's more likely they do than they don't, if that makes sense. It's very unlikely to imagine this Eagles team somehow not returning to the playoffs for a 3rd year in a row, or not securing a division. They've just done too much with the adversity they face. Like, if you think of how broken down that roster was last year, or even in the Super Bowl season, like, it doesn't matter. That roster has been deconstructed 2 years in a row. They're now going to come back healthier than they ever have been, with more stability than they ever have. Mainly because they're not going to lose those key coordinators and coaches now. You've got a year with working under those guys. And then you've got a very, very impressive draft class as well. So I think the chances of returning to the championship game with a number 1 seed are incredibly high. On to the questions in the DMs though. And we have got a pair today. Thank you next from Kuya2941. I hope I've said that right. Or @FolkJD, who's become a regular for this segment. So thank you for your support, my man. He says, why do you think the Eagles waited until after the draft to sign Brown when they could have done it before? Mainly because, I assume, just comes down to the nature of the draft. You don't know what's going to happen, right? Brown was released in March, and when you look at the landscape of things, the Eagles were widely mocked by myself and a million other people to take a cornerback in. No, I'm joking. But they were widely mocked to take a linebacker at some point, whether it would be Blake Cashman, whether it would be one of the guys a bit lower down. There were so many candidates that fit this team. Some even wanted Devin Bush. I was a big fan of that in the early stages of that draft process. There was a good chance the Eagles thought they could probably snag some late value at linebacker, and the draft changes. As Michael Kist said on our show before the NFL draft, it's one iteration of a million possibilities, I think. I probably got that wrong, but the minute that first pick is made, everything changes, and you get to pick 6 and the Giants take Daniel Jones, everything changes, everything flips on its head. So you don't know. The Eagles may not have liked what they've seen. They knew that Zach Brown was going to be available because at that age, coming off the injury that he did, regardless of his production, you're not going to pay him a big contract, and unfortunately Brown has fallen victim to that. So that's probably the reason why. Number 2, assuming Chris Long retires, do you believe the Eagles add DE talent before the season? Maybe Ziggy Ansah. Now, this was sent before Ziggy Ansah signed with Seattle, which is a great signing by the Seahawks, it must be said. Seahawks Twitter is the second best NFL Twitter of NFL Twitter, behind the Eagles, of course. Outside of that, we'll have to rank them, but it gets it. Minnesota are bottom. Alright, that's all that matters. Minnesota are bottom. But do I think the Eagles add any more defensive end talent? No, because they consistently talk up Joe Ostman. They like what they have in Josh Sweat. And after adding Sharif Miller, and obviously they've got Vinny Curry, that's on one side more than likely. So I don't think they're going to add any more, unfortunately, outside of that. It wouldn't be surprising if they do, but I would probably put money against that happening. He also asked a second question, says, thank you next. He even put thank you next before the question. That is the tea. That's the content we come for. Who's your favourite UDFA? Folk J, are you producing this show? Are you here reading my notes? Because you've just... look at that. Anthony Rush. Actually, no. Wildcard. Anthony Rush, I think, will make the roster. My favourite undrafted free agent. I'm assuming you mean signed by the Eagles. I'm going to go with Jay Liggins. So Jamalcolm Liggins, purely because I interviewed him and I think his skill set is very, very enticing. At 6'3", very rangy arms, comes out of the NAIAA, so the NYA division of schools. So you know what's really weird, right? Before I answer that, we keep having this where this podcast has so many little things, like Andrew Sende, right? And then I say it in a video or in a different kind of medium, and everyone comments like, the hell was that? What the hell was that at 2 minutes 53? And in the podcast, you guys lap it up. So good to know we've got a very specific niche hive here. But yeah, I think that Jamalcolm Liggins, he's a ball-hawking type corner. Will his skill set translate to the NFL? I hope so. He's certainly got the athletic tangibles to do that. And we don't know. If the Eagles move a cornerback up to safety, there may be a need. If Rasul Douglas moves to safety, which would be my wet dream, okay, you're then going to need to replace that ball-hawking tendency. Douglas led the Eagles in interceptions last year. I think Jamalcolm Liggins, who plays like a wide receiver, would be the perfect candidate to do that. So that would be my favourite UDFA. But that is it, I believe. I'm going to quickly scan through my mentions. Actually, no, there's not. There's one more question, which probably doesn't count as a question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Because I've been watching American sports for a while. And by a while, I mean like probably a decade at this point, maybe a bit more than that. And over that time, something sank into my head last night. Did I want a truck? Because all I see in advert breaks or commercials between games are adverts or commercials for trucks. Like the Ford F-150, I even know down to the model now, and you can get 0% finance on it, so that exists. You've then got the Chevy Silverado, you've got the Dodge Buick, I'm out after that, and a Toyota Grunge-mobile. But I put on Twitter last night, and I'll read this to just give some context here before I find the question. But my love for trucks is... Oh, do you know why I can't find it? Because I'm looking at my mentions and not Twitter. You can see I was trying to prolong that while I can't find what exactly I'm talking about there. Anyway, I put on Twitter late last night. After years of watching the ad breaks in American sports, I've decided I want a truck, and I want one now because truck. Now, one of the people at Impromptu96 said, which one would you buy? And my response was, I would buy the big Dodge Ford Chevy truck 157 with super strong truck finance for all the hauling I'll be doing. Need a truck that works as hard as me, and the Dodge Toyota just doesn't do it. Which I think is a very fair comment. I didn't realise, though, there are, you've got the faux John Gruden accounts, which are my favourite things on Twitter by a mile. There are, parody accounts for truck owners. There is an account called RamLover69 who replied to me saying, then you should visit your local Dodge dealer during their Bigger Things sales event to buy a brand new Dodge Ram, 2019's Motor Trend Truck of the Year, so you can get $3,700 bonus cash. And I was astounded that truck culture is a thing. His pinned tweet is, I am, then one of those little tick box charts saying gay, straight, pan, bi, asexual, and he's ticked hauling 12,000 pounds of steel beams with my Dodge Ram 2019's Motor Trend Truck of the Year. So, I just thought that needed mentioning. I mean, do you own trucks? Are trucks a good investment? Shall I buy a truck? I think that I can't drive. That needs to be said before we go any further with this truck segment. That could be a big barrier. But I also realised that learning to drive in America is a very different experience. In England, you need lessons, okay? Now, these lessons, you go out with an instructor, someone that's qualified, and by qualified I mean can drive, and run their own school, and you have to put an L plate on the car for all the L's you're going to take in your love life, but that's what I was told. And you go around, it stands for learner, and you drive really slowly and annoy every other driver. And then you've got to sit a theory exam, and then you sit a practical exam. However, in America, you could just go out with your parent, have 60 hours worth of driving, and go, yeah, I can drive now. Imagine that. Imagine just your parent just teaching you how to drive. Just driving around in a little Dodge Ram 2019's Motor Trend Truck of the Year. That's amazing. What a dream. I have to go round with a weird-looking instructor that probably looks like he should be on some kind of offenders register. I can just go out with my parent in a 2019 Motor Trend Truck of the Year for 60 hours combined and learn to drive. That's amazing. What a country. Land of the free. I'm moving to America as soon as I can. I'm had it. I just need to get this in the podcast because this is a revelation to me. And it's now gone from me wanting to move to Philadelphia to me wanting to own a Dodge Ram Motor Trend 2019 Truck of the Year. So we're going to get back onto Eagles topics before I just end up ranting about God knows what else. There are a couple more things we need to touch on. One of them being something that has come into a lot of discussion this past week. And that is that because there doesn't seem to be a lot of depth at interior guard right now, as in, people are going, oh my god, Brandon Brooks may not be healthy for the start of the regular season. Isaac Seumalo starts at left guard. Who starts wherever else? I know, let's move Jason Peters and Halapoulivaati Vaitai to guard positions. Little story, before we get on to reasons why this may or may not happen, okay? I liken this to, we're going back to the DIY store. If this is your first episode of The Outside Insider, this is this is what every episode is like. It has logical points, and then we get off scale, and then we mention how ruined my love life is, and then we talk about the DIY store. This is the crux of the show, okay? So, this DIY store, I used to work on tills because, if you've seen me, my 38-inch vertical is fantastic, but I'm quite lanky, which means when it comes to lifting timber and wood and sandbags and cement, I can't do very much. But occasionally, I'm going to get pulled out. They're going to go, Liam, Doris is 75 and you're stronger than her. And I'm going to go, well, let's not, assume, okay? Assume makes an ass out of you and me, Darren, okay? I think she can do it on her own. Anyway, I need to start loading cars, and they're going to get me out there in the pouring rain with a high visibility jacket on, looking like an idiot, while I try and lift timber onto someone's car. And I promise you this happened, okay? There was this family, and it gives me PTSD to this day. I'm not even kidding. They wanted to get, it was 25 massive floor tiles, concrete slabs, onto a trolley. Their son, who could only be described as Brock Lesnar, stood and watched while I struggled getting them onto a trolley. I went to sandwich one of the things down using my leg to balance. It caught my leg, clipped it, and pinched the skin so hard I screamed like a little girl. It was bleeding. It was the worst. And then they asked me to load them into their cars, and they also ordered loads of timber. I was limping everywhere. I just wanted to be back on tills at that point. I know I could load it. I'm not an idiot. Okay, I am an idiot. there's a reason I'm doing this full time now. I wasn't cut out for that work, alright? I get to the car with big timber, and I'm talking, I want to say 3.5 meter long, like, poles here, and you have like a pack of 6 you have on your shoulder, and you go to put them on. And I'm not even kidding, we're in a car park. I have the poles on my shoulder. I'm walking from the store where the trolley is parked to the car. I'm wearing a headset. Someone says Liam. I turn around with the wood on me, and I knock a canoe off the car next to me. I'll say that again. A canoe. I'm assuming the guy was going canoeing, so he's like strapped it to the top of his car using one of those racks, right? But obviously not very securely, because me and my brute strength turn around with this wood that just twats the canoe. It goes flying onto the floor. The guy's shopping in the store somewhere. And I've got 2 options. Do I run back? Or do I just pretend it didn't happen, get the wood on the car, limp back to the store like nothing ever happened? Of course I chose option B. Then I had to submit an injury thing, and they said that I was hurting myself, so they couldn't have to give me any, I don't know, there was something they had to fill out so we didn't hurt their health and safety thing that basically said it was my own fault. And then I just looked out the window, and the guy was very angry and trying to wonder what happened. So luckily for me, I told him we didn't have CCTV. But that is not the point. The point is that comparison of me, someone that was purely capable on tills, purely capable of somewhere else, is like going from tackle to guard. Like going from tackle to guard. To go from one offensive line spot to the other, it's hard to do. Because the height and the length that is desirable at tackle, you suddenly then lose. You want to get shorter at guard because you've got less space to defend. If you, as a tackle, lose inside, you've got a guard to help. You need to be more athletic, more jumpy. If you're going to be a guard, it's a different skill set. Now, the tackles who make the best jump to guards are the more versatile guys. Guys who maybe aren't as athletic, have a lot of functional strength, maybe a bit shorter, because they've got to eat up a lot of real estate at tackle. They need to be able to get around the field quickly. At guard, you're then limited, so you're relying on that firm base, that anchoring ability. So while it can make sense, if you're someone that has maybe a shorter wingspan, someone mentioned Andre Dillard. I don't think Andre Dillard going to guard would work. He hasn't even learned tackle yet. Let's give him time. Jason Peters moving to guard would work. I think as a shorter guy, he's like 6'4", he wouldn't have to be relying on the athleticism, which is going to burn him out and maybe enhance injuries, so that would work. But the one player I would position to moving to guard, or actually jumping up and taking a starting role, will be Matt Pryor. TCU drafted 5th round last year, 6'7", he is a bit taller, he is a bit more athletic, but he played every position along the Horned Frogs offensive line during his time at college. He's had a year in development under Jeff Stoutland. They see him as a swing guard and tackle, and then now get to a position where you can have Sayamalo starting on the left, put Pryor on the right. No, he's got help inside and out then, because then the help he's getting is either Jason Kelsey or Lane Johnson, right? Like, that's a good spot to be in, as opposed to Jason Peters, who can be inconsistent at times. I think Matt Pryor has got the perfect skill set. I spoke to him last year. Enthusiastic guy. He literally came out of the gym. You could hear him panting. Hard worker. Chemistry with Vitae. You don't need to move a tackle inside when you've got a guard that was so productive at TCU. And if it's just for 3 weeks, the help they can give him will be ridiculous. You don't need to move Vitae inside, who I think would struggle. He doesn't have the requisite traits to move inside to guard. I genuinely feel as though Matt Pryor is going to be the guy that steps up. And that is the T we're going to end on. We were going to get to running backs, but then we don't have anything to talk about next week, guys. It's the off-season. We've got to space this out a little bit. We'll do a whole show dedicated to running backs, maybe even a second show just for running backs, because there's another underdog that I like that isn't getting any love whatsoever that will get a video and an article and a podcast, because I'm a triple threat, okay? That's what we do. So that's going to come soon. Maybe a whole podcast dedicated to running backs. But thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this podcast, guys. It really does mean the absolute world to me. What have we learned today? That Anthony Rush is basically a Hall of Famer. We've learned that tackles can make guards and guards can make tackles. but it's not always an easy transition, just like me knocking a canoe off a car, and also the Dodge Ram is 2019's Motor Trend Truck of the Year. If you enjoyed this show, leave a like, hit subscribe, please leave a 5-star rating on iTunes if you'd be so inclined, it would mean the world to me. You can follow me at Liam Jenkins 21 on Twitter. I'll see you next time.